Hi, my name is Kylie Saltman, and this is my presentation on sex addiction. What is sex addiction? Sex addiction is the idea that people engage in excessive sexual activity. The idea of sex addiction has been around for a little bit of time, so quite some time. Terms such as nymphomania has been used for women, whereas Don Juanism has been used for men. So as you can see down here, we have a movie called Nymphomaniac, which is about adults who have mass amounts of sex, and Don John, which is a movie about a man who is addicted to watching pornography and consumes massive amounts of pornography. Sex addiction and its various forms. So, sex addiction does not include just sex, it also includes viewing mass amounts of pornography. Sex has become a sought out topic amongst users online, and professionals have suggested that a new variety of sex addiction has emerged via pornography. Some professionals, they have debated whether or not pornography is an addiction or if it is a compulsivity. The history of sex addiction. So, addiction is the failure to resist an impulse. It is a motive or an attraction. Sex addiction has been debated heavily if it is a genuine addiction. Some professionals, they have stated that there is no way to determine if sex addiction is a genuine addiction because it is hard to define how excessive sex can be. So it's hard to define because what is one person's, excessive amount is another person's small amount. So there's really no way to label what is excessive. Sexual addiction did not have much legitimacy until Patrick Carnes' book, The Sexual Addiction, that was published in 1983. So Patrick Carnes stated that many people who engage in sex addiction are manifesting the same symptoms as a psychological addiction, which includes helping aid the feelings of depression, anxiety, and loneliness. So, like the act of sex or viewing pornography can help relieve these feelings through a sexual high, which can be similar to the high achieved through the use of mood altering drugs such as cocaine or alcohol. It wasn't until the 2000s that sex addiction has been reviewed and studied as an addiction, and this is because of the use of technology and the sky high views of pornography. So, it has never been able to truly be analyzed as to how much people are having sex, like one on one, but there is a way to view stats on who's viewing pornography and what they're viewing. So that's been a really good additive to sex addiction. Symptoms of sex addiction is the uncontrolled sexual behavior patterns despite negative consequences. Continuing self-destructive or highly risky behaviors happen frequently. So this could be somebody who has unprotected sex with multiple partners in a short amount of time, or things like that. The person's constant desire to limit sexual behavior, sexual obsessions becoming a basic coping mechanism. So they can think about sex when they're not having sex, or think about watching pornography, or even viewing pornography, or even having sex. These obsessions that they have become a coping mechanism for things like stress or anxiety or depression, loneliness, and things like that. An increase in amount of sexual experience desired. Severe mood changes around sexual activity and negligence toward other areas of life other than sexuality. So this can be somebody who really neglects other areas of their life in pursuit of watching pornography or having sex. They could miss out on family events like weddings or birthdays or anything like that, or miss out like on work or friends. It's just like a true negligence towards their life other than their sexuality. So these three pictures, I would say, can really put into pictures to what sex addiction can be like for somebody who is suffering from it. Is something that is at the forefront of their brain. It's something that they want and they crave. And this is said with really any addiction. So somebody who's addicted to cocaine is constantly fixing for their next high. They want it, and it's like what they think about. And if they don't have it, they get restless and they get angry and things like that. So this is what is somebody who has sex addiction, this could be what it's like in their brain, and how hard that can be with having that be at the forefront of the brain in the thought process. So, the truth and myths of sex addiction. Myths of sex addicts come in many different forms, and some of those can be harmful to those who suffer from sex addiction. A common misconception of sex addiction is that individuals who suffer from this want to have sex during every waking hour. This could be the case for some and not for others. It's a common and harmful misconception about sex addiction that can make it hard for individuals to understand what it is like for somebody who suffers from this. It is assumed that if someone is a sex addict, they must have multiple partners, and this is not the case for all. Again, it's harmful to assume this. Somebody could have one partner that they compulsively have sex with all of the time. It is not this idea that they have multiple partners and go out every night. This is not how it could be for some individuals. Sex addiction has been compared to the likes of eating disorders, which some professionals disagree with because it implies that both include a lack of control. So, some professionals do not view sex addiction as an addiction, which I think is an interesting parallel or even like a juxtaposition in psychology. But it's a more of like a compulsivity, and it's acting on these compulses that can bring shame and creates a cycle of having sex to fix the issues or even negative feelings that they're experiencing. But to touch on the professionals not viewing it as an addiction, it's interesting because there's no concrete definition as to what sex addiction is or what sex addiction entails. And I think it's as more information gets brought in over time, the more concrete it will be. It is yet to be discovered if pornography is a genuine addiction or if it's a harmless outlet. This is another interesting one. So this isn't like an online gambling addiction where somebody is blowing all of their money on blackjack or poker online. And, that's harmful because you are losing your money. You are losing what you need to survive. With pornography, a lot of pornography is free online, so it's hard to say if it is a harmless outlet or not. The anonymity of pornography has drawn in more users over the lifespan of the internet and creates a compulsive environment for the user to be engaging in sexual activities. So platforms like OnlyFans is where users can pay monthly fees to watch sex workers. So this could be where it gets a bit muddled. If somebody is spending all of their money on OnlyFans, this can be a sign of addiction. Sex addiction and its recent studies. There's not much scientific evidence to suggest that sex addiction is an addiction. It's just merely suggested that it is an addiction because it elicits the same cycle of those who suffer from drug or alcohol addiction. The early 2000s is when a spike of literature regarding sex addiction really came around. And this is when researchers found that those who struggle with sex addiction suffer from childhood trauma and want to escape those negative feelings. And it can also include neurobiological reasons as to why they have issues with sex addiction. Sexologists display a concern for labeling sexual compulsivity as an addiction because it is rare to diagnose and it is not classified in the DSM-5. They believe that labeling it as an addiction it negates individual responsibility for their actions. And it is still a new topic in the world of psychology, and more research needs to be done so that concrete definitions and decisions can be made so that people who suffer from this can really feel like they are receiving help. So, what have I learned about sex addiction? I've learned that it is a topic that needs really concrete research to be done and to have professionals really come to a conclusion as to what sex addiction is, what it entails, so that people can really feel as though they are being helped, so that they don't have to suffer from feelings of despair through having compulsive sex. Sex addiction is not a mainstream focus, and it hasn't been until the 2000s. And it's because of the internet that this has become a really big deal, and it's really brought a light to what sex addiction can be. Most professionals, like I said, have yet to agree on whether or not sex addiction is worth being its own diagnostic area or a symptom of an underlying issue, but I truly think that it should. It is a genuine issue that needs to be talked about, and it is not something that can be easily swept away. Sex addiction or compulsivity is a real issue, and it really plagues individuals, and the more research that can be done, the better. And these are my references. Thank you.